A group of friends goes on a winter holiday to a lonely hut in the middle of a gloomy forest. It would seem that something might not go according to plan, but what happened was that they were overtaken by zombie fascists from the Second World War who were clearly not happy with the guests. Groups of friends consisting of Martin, Roy, Vigard, and Erland go to the agreed meeting place. Hannah, Liv, and Chris are sitting in the other car. After a couple of hours, the friends finally get to the right place. All they have to do is follow the tracks of the snowmobile, and in 45 minutes they will come to the hut. Martin wonders if they get lost. Can they call 911? To which Vigard replies, "There is no connection in this area, but enough talk, it's time for them to move on." And while Vigard makes tracks with a snowmobile, the whole group follows him. Erland jokingly asks if they have watched films where friends go to God knows where, and the phones stop working. At this time, Erland reaches the hut. A friend should already be waiting for them there, but surprisingly, the hut is completely empty. One way or another, he begins to light the stove. After 30 minutes, the whole group reunites. It's time to go tubing, and then play snowballs until the evening. Returning to the hut, the friends begin to play Twister. And although Erland doesn't particularly like this game at first, Chris fixes everything. A little later, Liv goes to the toilet, but someone's steps haunt her. Thinking that these are friends, she goes outside, but does not notice anyone, exactly until a dark silhouette runs through the forest. Liv rushes headlong into the hut, declaring that someone is watching them. Martin assumes that it is Sarah, who is a little late, but Liv is sure. It's definitely not her. Wanting to check her statement, Roy opens the door, but does not notice anyone, when suddenly a man appears behind him, startling the group. After drinking a cup of coffee, the man asks, "Whose house is this?" Vigard answers, "To the girl who is coming here through the pass." This astonishes the man, because obviously none of them even thought about where they had come. He starts telling a story. During World War II, the Germans had a naval base here, completely secret to the whole world. Their main goal was not to miss the convoy from England to Russia. Usually the Germans tried not to touch the locals, but rather to find a common language. But here, everything was different. Their leader, Colonel Herzog, turned this place into a real hell. But by the end of the war, they had gone too far. Realizing that the Russians were too close, their detachment walked through the city, taking everything that glittered, and those who were against were killed without hesitation. However, they did not take into account that the local residents organized a militia, and that night, Colonel Duke's detachment was defeated. But he and a handful of his associates still managed to escape to the mountains, precisely to this area. A group of friends take his story as a joke, upsetting the man, and he leaves the hut to set up a tent. After a couple of hours, the sounds of walking begin to be heard. A man with a gun at the ready goes outside to check the surroundings. A German soldier was waiting for him there, with the subsequent elimination of the man. A new day comes. Vigard cannot forget the man's story, which is why he wants to go in search of Sarah, and if he doesn't return by tomorrow, they will need to leave urgently. During a halt, Vigard notices someone's tent. Thinking that it is Sarah, he looks inside and is shocked. Having examined the territory, he notices footprints going further into the slope. At this time, Erland, in his desire to get a jar of liquid gold, finds an ancient treasure. Meanwhile, Vigard, wandering through the snow, falls into an air pocket and immediately passes out. Late at night, Erland has an urge to go to the toilet, and on the way he accidentally loses a coin. A couple of minutes later, the German picks up this coin and then hunts for Chris. No matter how much she screams and calls for help, her friends cannot hear anything because of the loud music. A little later, they still realize that the girl has disappeared somewhere and go out to search, but it doesn't lead to anything, when suddenly their conversations are interrupted by a zombie fascist who arrives in time. The friends arm themselves as quickly as possible with everything they can get their hands on, but the Germans don't care, because their strength is enough to shake the whole hut, simultaneously breaking through the doors and giving Erland a massage. So the group is reduced by one person. At first light, Hannah suggests that they split into two groups, and someone will have to be the bait. It becomes Martin and Roy. Vigard comes to his senses, but is unable to get out from under the snow piles. Having made a torch, he makes his way deeper into the cave, stumbling upon the main German base. Although one of them is trying to remain unnoticed, Vigard's hearing was much better, and he fights back. And after that, he even gets out of the cave. Since the zombie fascist is not afraid of sunlight, the battle moves to the surface, where Vegard is again one step ahead. But before he had time to celebrate the victory, another warrior emerges from under the snow. The battle shifts to the edge of the cliff, where the German bayonet was so conveniently lying, and Vegard kills the enemy, when suddenly the recently defeated fascist is resurrected again, knocking the guy down the cliff. But his guts do not allow him to fall to the bottom. Now the German is a little hungry, which is why he snacks on Vegard, who, with his last strength, sends the enemy into free flight. At this time, the friends rush to the car with a couple of Germans on their tail, but thanks to Hannah, their number is decreasing. Liv is much less fortunate and falls into a trap. Realizing full well that her journey is over, she snatches a grenade, eliminating a couple of fascists. Colonel Herzog himself observes all this and orders his squad to catch all survivors. The first person they find is Hannah, who again fights back and runs away. True, luck does not last forever, and there is a cliff ahead of it. Not wanting to fall into their hands, Hannah knocks on the ground, thereby breaking the snow and going into free fall. At this time, Martin and Roy held the defense. In the heat of battle, Martin checks his phone and notices that there is a connection. He immediately dials 911 to explain how they are fighting off the Nazis of World War II, which is why they are perceived as crazy and the call is dropped. Roy doesn't understand how anyone could talk such nonsense. Why couldn't they say that they were attacked by bandits? But there is no time to argue. They need to find a new defensive position, like this barn, where the sledgehammer and chainsaw so conveniently lay. Having caught their breath, the friends run to the attack, eliminating 8 opponents. While in the distance, reinforcements not only of the Germans, but also of Vegard are running along with the machine gun from which he opens fire. As soon as everything calmed down, Martin explains what happened to them. But one thing they didn't take into account was that fascist zombies have such a feature as resurrection. Because of this, Vegard didn't have a single chance, and he leaves this world. Duo immediately runs to avenge his friend, accidentally killing Hannah in the heat of battle. At the same time, Colonel Herzog himself arrives on the battlefield along with his personal detachment, but even they can't do anything to the duo. True, during the battle, Martin was nevertheless bitten, and since he loves watching movies about zombies, he gets the idea to chop off his own hand. After the procedure, Martin begins to rejoice, but only until the next German bites off his fried egg, and now a new procedure appears in Martin's head. But their thoughts are interrupted by the Colonel, who with just one cry awakens the entire legion, surprising the guys. All they can do is run, but the Colonel was much faster in killing Roy. Then it dawns on Martin that most likely the Nazis are looking for a lost treasure, and as soon as the Colonel receives the box, he allows Martin to leave alive. A couple of hours pass, he finally gets to the car, not yet realizing that in his pocket there is one doubloon, which the Colonel was missing. This is where the first film ends. We'll see you soon. Bye.